Ladies and gentlemen, greetings from the Pioneer Dream Studios here in the heart of Bartlesville, Oklahoma.
The metropolis, thriving metropolis of Bartlesville, Oklahoma.
Heart of the known universe.
It is.
And we are here with Dreamers Live, our podcast. This is episode 006.
Wow, we have done 6. I'm super proud.
Yes, and today's episode is entitled Us versus Them. How provocative.
That is provocative. I'm very impressed, actually, that you remembered the title.
We should let the home listening, viewing audience know that while you sound sick, you're not contagious for them. You do sound like you might break into Betty Davis eyes at any moment.
Yeah, it sounds like I'm like a pack-a-day smoker.
Yeah.
I'm going to just be singing a lot of Joan Jett, maybe some Janis Joplin later.
We have both been in colds / allergies / SARS. I don't know what it is.
The SARS, is that still a thing?
The SARS is still a thing.
There's so many things to fear. There's also, like, the bird flu is back.
The bird flu, the mad cow disease. You can get the whole nose arc and illness if you give yourself a chance.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, why are there so many diseases coming from the animals?
I know not.
I don't know. Anyway.
It's a crazy thing. But
I'm going to just say a lot of, like, really cool stuff like,
Yeah.
Right.
You kind of have that radio DJ voice now. I mean, that's the voice that most female DJs want to have, that kind of throaty.
Yeah, it is. Well, that's what first attracted you to all of this package.
Yeah, I
was
know,
my high school radio job. Remember the radio station?
Well, I heard you before I saw you.
It's like when you say, well, she had a face for radio.
Yeah. I was just joking with your brother yesterday, as a matter of fact. We were talking about, for those who don't know, however you're listening or enjoying this podcast, that this podcast is both on video, but also on where you get all your traditional podcast, which is audio only. So there's a danger in doing a video podcast.
Yeah, I don't like it because when I signed up for this, you didn't tell me about the video part because I have to like wear clothes and clean my hair and stuff.
And so the challenge is it's a little bit like getting an audiobook read by the author. And so that, like I was saying to your brother, several years ago, there was a series of books that I really enjoyed by this one particular author, and I made the mistake then of getting his audiobook.
Oh.
And so up to that point, all the content of the books had kind of been like these jokey men things, and it wasn't like high testosterone stuff, but there was a lot of guy humor kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the author's voice was very effeminate and high, and I thought, you have just ruined your entire collection for me. I cannot.
Just because his voice didn't appeal to you?
It just didn't connect with the material he'd written.
That is pretty surface level thinking, bud.
So anyway,
but
I'm a little concerned that will happen for us as a podcast, that people will fall madly in love with our persona and our content.
Oh, and then if they see us, they're going to be sorely disappointed.
Yes, and that's usually the way it works.
Does your mind work like this? When you read a book, does your mind create voices for the characters?
Not at the level that yours does.
Really?
Right.
But does it have a...
You're much more animated than I am.
Well, I mean, you're right. Mm-hmm. But does it create like a visual for how you think they are to look?
Well, now that's for certain, yeah.
Really? That's interesting.
Sure.
So you don't get the voice, but you
no,
have
and that's
a way.
why a lot of movies ruin books for people, because and oddly enough, it's especially true with suspense or thriller or horror films where there might be a monster or something like that, because what your mind can conceive is almost always more drastic, bigger, more detailed than what you will see on a screen.
Depicted on screen. Your imagination is.
Well, each of us has our
scarier.
own fear point. So when you're imagining something and from your palette of fears,
the palette of fears.
The palette of fears, which was, that's another great book. But so when you're working from your own palette of fears, I mean, there's a lot that works for you. And then when somebody else paints from a different palette and it doesn't include your fears, it's like, oh, this is awful.
This isn't that scary.
This is not what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and it kind of threw me off. So, as I probably had mentioned this before, because it's such a big part of our life, but our 12-year-old daughter is a massive Potterhead.
Yes.
And so we're trying to get through all of the Harry Potter
Potterhead's
books.
different than a pothead.
It is.
She's not a pothead as of yet. She's
but
a
you know, the
Potterhead.
first Potterheads are probably all in their like 30s now, so there may be some crossover there.
Yeah, that's true.
Potterheads.
I think there's a marketing thing in there somewhere.
I'm sure there is.
Potter's Pot, something, I don't know. Whatever kind of.
But we're trying to get through all those books. So you cheated and listened to the audiobooks. You totally did.
I have so many things to read. I was already 3 books in, and each of those books is a series of novels within itself.
Well,
so
it is.
they're all like 800 pages long, and I just ain't got time for that.
So ain't nobody got time for that. So I am currently suffering through. I actually like the books. It's just very long. Book 5, and so I feel like I'm in the last quarter.
Yeah. Well, and book 5 is just like jammed. It's like, okay, there's all these things we needed to catch you up on before we close this thing out. So here's all this.
Yes. Well, the thing that messed me up about the Harry Potter books is normally my mind would create a voice and then a way these characters are to look, but everybody has seen the characters in Harry Potter, even if you hadn't seen the movies. And so, but it's in a way kind of helpful because you know what they look like, so you imagine like movie characters.
Yeah.
I just realized that we have done a lot of talking and it has zero to do with what we're going to talk about. But it was
interesting. That's all bonus material, friends. That's what we call bonus materials. And so you don't have to pay for any of that. We're going to give that to you for free.
It is. So I digress if you want to get on with the podcast.
No. So actually this subject we're talking about today was actually something we talked about in our very last Dreamers, which was at a brewery in Tulsa. Man, that was a great night. And
that was cool.
Lots of new faces and lots of new people. Speaking of which, before we jump in all this, I will say that we do this thing called Dreamers Live. It's usually about every 4 to 6 weeks. It's somewhere between 20 and 40 people at different venues and almost always over the cocktail hour. And it's really, really cool because the people there are diverse. It's really moved and shaped by the people that are there, and it kind of has ended up kind of creating this little sense of community within this group. And so every time we get together, maybe about half of those people are repeat Dreamers, and then half are new, so it's always kind of fresh. And a lot of times we'll have some kind of conversation topic, like a little mini TED Talk kind of thing.
Right, a J Talk.
And then we break up in these discussion groups, and the discussion groups are totally random. So you get a number when you walk in. It's usually 1 through 6 or something like that, and then all the 1s get together, all the 2s get together. So the people that you're with are just random people that you may or may not know. And we know that this person in that group is kind of alt-right and this person over here is way left. And so you kind of wait for the fireworks to happen, which never really happens. What is interesting is that it's usually the most diverse groups that end up staying and talking the longest, and you have to break them up later.
And really connecting. It's been pretty cool to watch that happen, because a lot of times it's just luck of the draw on the groups, and I'll go, oh my gosh, how's this going to go with that person, with that person? And we've never had a bad experience. Everybody ends up leaving connected and feeling like they've shared some good
And we love to do
information.
those in different venues. So sometimes we've been at our Pioneer Dreamer studios. Sometimes we've been at other places. We've been at breweries a couple of times. And there are plenty of people who don't enjoy libations the way that we do. But it seems to help either way. The atmosphere is kind of cool. So I said all that to say that if you would like us to do a Dreamers with you in your hometown and or your home group, whether you have a group of friends or a civic group or club or whatever, we would love to come and do that.
We would. We've also spoken to several different ages of school kids, which has been very interesting to try to help them understand how to talk with each other and look for good qualities. And it's been a cool experience. Yeah, we would love to come do that for your group.
We've done it with United Way groups. We've done it with Rotarians, which is not a denomination. I was surprised to find out. And so anyway,
kind of is. They're pretty serious about their Rotary
man, they're serious about doing
but
good
they
stuff.
do a lot of good in the world.
Oh my gosh,
for sure.
So anyway, let us come do a Dreamers with you. We'd love to do it. It'd be a lot of fun. And so in this last Dreamers Live event that we did at a brewery in Tulsa, we had a lot of new people, and we kind of opened with this conversation about us versus them. Like, when was your first moment to have an us versus them awareness, a scenario? So it comes in like 100 different shades. It can be, I remember the us versus them in school being a thing. Like, there were kids who kind of had money, who had, they came to lunch with matching lunch boxes and thermoses, and then there were kids like me who were just reusing paper brown bags for lunch, that kind of stuff. People who had like the store-bought lunches, so they would show up with the cool lunch item of the day, so the Capri Suns and the Snackwables
Teddy
and whatever,
Grahams
whatever it was that was super cool.
It was the 70s, so they probably weren't that cool.
And we were just packing leftovers or reusable stuff from the house.
I was always so embarrassed, and I feel bad. I apologize to my mom now, but my dad, growing up, was a minister. He still is.
Yeah.
But and she was really just doing her best to like save money and also send us with healthy lunches.
Yeah.
But I'd be sitting next to somebody, they'd have like the fanciest like Superman lunch pail or Wonder Woman or whatever, and they'd have, like you said, the Capri Suns and all the like fancy cookies. And then I would be there and I would have like a sandwich, and then my mom had a habit of sending like a boiled egg in foil. And I was like, Mom, do you know the shame you're bringing on my second grade self right now with this not only boiled egg in foil, and sometimes there'd be like celery or whatever.
And now, man, there's like nothing better than a hard-boiled egg.
Dude,
salt and pepper.
Do you know that I had a hard-boiled egg earlier today?
Get on.
And I was like, this is soft food at its finest.
Yeah. Prepping yourself for old age.
I was. But yes, the us and them, the lunches, like
and
the people who have the cool lunches.
Yeah, and then I was on the swim team, and that was a really close, tight-knit group.
Was that those who wear Speedos and those who didn't?
It was those who were stained with the smell of chlorine and those who were not.
You
had bleach blonde hair no matter what you came out with. You left with bleach blonde hair.
Blonde.
And then, of course, I grew up Irish Catholic, and at that moment, I think it's changed a little bit since then. But when I was coming up, certainly within our family, it was kind of like there were Catholics and everybody else.
Yeah, you were Catholic or you weren't.
Yes, yeah, and so that's just kind of the way we saw the world, and I think a lot of people saw us that way too.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
But what was your experience growing up like? You were Baptist.
Yeah, I was raised Baptist, and I've said before that my parents were actually. Were always pretty open-minded and open-hearted. So I knew that this didn't necessarily represent their viewpoint.
Yeah.
But yes, growing up Baptist, or kind of, I guess, are Baptists considered evangelicals?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, they are. And so, yes, there was definitely a feeling in like the broader church, in the church at large, that there were sort of Baptists and then there were the others.
Yes.
I mean, and like Methodists were a little closer, but the Presbyterians, it was like there's
you had
sort
a bit of a hierarchy of the pagans. So the Baptists are going to heaven, the others are pagans, but the Methodists were the least of the pagans.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, the funny thing was, it was almost like a sliding scale toward a liturgical practice. So the most liturgical, that term, would be Catholics.
Yeah.
And so then you kind of work your way back. There was like Lutheran, Presbyterian, Methodist, and then Baptist.
Well, see, and I think we felt like we had the points because we felt the guiltiest. So so I felt like, Catholics were working the hardest.
Yeah.
My friend Brent Cola, when we were growing up, he used to mock me and say, man, you guys can do whatever you want. And then just go to the confessional, you say, hey, I did this. They say, you're forgiven. You said, I'm clean, I'm out. and he thought that was not really
he was just jealous.
I think
really.
so.
Yeah, no. Brent was raised more in the tradition like I was.
Yeah.
And so that makes sense. But yeah, there was definitely, I remember the Catholic team, and we would play, if you're from Oklahoma, church softball is like a big deal.
It's a denomination unto itself.
It really is.
Yeah.
So we always had church softball teams, right? And so we would play the Catholics would be one of, so you play the Methodists as Monday night if your games, the next time's Presbyterian. You get to the Catholics, especially on the guys' teams. So I remember my dad's church softball team. My dad was a great softball player, still is. And we would play the Catholics.
It took it really seriously too, man.
And they did take it seriously. And they were like rough and tumble.
Yeah.
And I remember one time going around thinking, are they even allowed to play softball with us? And then I went around, and in the dugout, they had a cooler of like Coors Light. And I was like, oh my God, everybody's going to hell. And now I'd be like, Coors Light, let's get better beer. This is great. Let's all share. But no, there was definitely an us versus them. And what's funny, I think about, and we didn't mean to talk about just Baptists and Catholics, but I think what's interesting about both of those particular two groups, especially back in the day when we were there, it was kind of like Baptists had the only way to know God,
right,
and Catholics had the only real way to know God.
Absolutely.
And it was like,
Well, and then
you had to be one or the other.
We were very certain about all of our little intricacies and moments of faith things. So, like, you know, for Catholics, it was about being sprinkled in your baptism, sprinkled versus Baptists who wanted to do the dunk.
Yeah, we like to swim.
And we had a thing like you had to be baptized like right away, like come out and like 8 days later. You're
like in case you change your mind.
Or? Well, like in case something happened to you as a kid, if you weren't baptized, man.
Yeah, definitely.
And,
but there was definite divide, right? It was Capulets and Montagues.
Well, and
you're
then,
welcome for the Romeo and Juliet reference this early in the day.
And then as we kind of got older and we entered into, you know, like the 80s and 90s, I don't know why we're into this thing, but anyway, so here we are. But anyway, so, you know, the kind of quote evangelical church took a big hard right turn.
Yeah.
And then there became an us versus them in terms of if you were a Christian or not. So there were the people who went to church.
Right.
But for the people who went to church, there was an absolute us versus them. There was us versus the world, us versus everybody else out there. And if you didn't take Jesus seriously, if you didn't take
in the way that we
seriously,
say how you need to take them seriously.
If you didn't follow the rules, then you were on the outs.
You're so right. In fact, we used to refer to everyone else that didn't go to church as the world.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it was like us, God lovers, who are giving up our time to be miserable with all these Sunday services. I'm sorry. When you're raised Baptist and your dad's a music minister, you're there Sunday morning, Sunday night, choir practice, you know, most days of the week.
So there were the people who were going to heaven and then everybody else.
Everybody else.
Yeah. And so then it became like a little ghetto thing. So the church ended up getting like its own. I mean, like the church at large in America. So like, regardless of your denomination, you had your own comedians, you had your own music, you had your own gatherings. And then you didn't associate really with them unless you were forced to because you worked with them or went to school with them.
Because they might rub off on you.
Yeah.
Yes, the world might rub off on you.
So then we became the isolated us.
Yeah.
Keeping ourselves from being contaminated from the really dirty them.
Yes, the other them. Yeah. So to me, that was, in the 80s and 90s especially. I will say on a positive note, I mean, I've seen a lot of that, I feel. Not completely, but a lot of that has dissipated.
Well, there's been a deconstruction of the whole kind of fundamentalist movement.
Deconstruction's a bad word. I can't believe you just said that.
Sorry about that.
You mean looking at something a different way based on new information you have as you age and have more life?
I'll list this as explicit now.
Yes.
No, but I think this kind of deconstruction of the fundamentalist movement and breaking that thing down has changed the American church at large. It has changed the lines and divisions between denominations in a lot of ways, and it has opened a lot of stuff. And to me, that's a really great thing. But
I remember having a conversation with your dad. This is funny because this isn't really what we're going to talk about, but it's cool. It was really sweet. It was right after we got married, so we were like big news, right? Baptist marries Catholic.
Right.
You were the first non-Catholic, or the first person in your family to marry a non-Catholic.
Yes, so.
You were, And so I remember that when we first got married, we were already young, so they were worried about us, that being a big deal. And I remember sitting down, your dad, I think when we got engaged, said one time, and this was actually knowing the perspective that you grew up in, really big of him. He said, listen, we're coming at this from different ways and different ways that we've lived and believe. He said, but the key issue here is that we all believe in God.
Yeah.
And I thought, I really respected him for that. He was saying it's difficult for us that you're from a different tradition.
Yes.
But at the root of it, when we look at it, we're the same.
Yeah.
And that was really cool of your dad.
Yeah, and I felt like, they thought, I was entering into a slippery slope, that I would turn my back on that tradition, I would turn my back on that faith, and something that was, for them, it was a really important part of their life, is very sincere about all that stuff.
They were.
And so I get the weight of that. And so while all that was happening in the 80s and 90s, there was another thing that was also kind of happening in the, quote, secular world.
Oh, you mean the regular people?
For the rest of the humans. Yeah. So at that same time, the whole political radio thing was kind of blowing up. We had just kind of come out of this kind of beige, hazy 70s thing, and we'd had, President Carter, and that had been a really difficult couple of years.
Was it hazy because of the Potter
It may have been. But, the whole 70s thing was kind of beige, and we were into a recession, and things were difficult, and there were gas lines, and there were hostages, and there was a lot going on in the 4 years that Jimmy Carter was president, and that not all those things were his fault, but then we ended up getting a cowboy for a president, and Ronald Reagan, and that was that was what that was too, and so both of them kind of had their own things.
Sure.
And then from there, this kind of cultural tug of war began about who we were going to be as a nation and who we should be as a nation and our values and morality and this whole thing. And at that same moment, political radio kind of started to explode.
So you're talking about the era where, ladies and gentlemen and young children, there was an era before talk radio.
Yeah.
And where people played music.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of interesting, actually, because talk radio is the easiest thing ever you can produce, because you literally just, we're doing it right now. I'm getting paid zero money. So there you go. Turn on a microphone and people talk. And if it's interesting, people will listen.
Right.
So the industry grew from a ratings perspective, but politics infiltrated that.
Yes.
And it kind of became what I would refer to, and you know what, you can use this term if you want to for free, infotainment.
There you go.
So it's sort of like the mix between news
right.
and politics and entertainment. And that became commentary, really is what it is.
And that became the dangerous part. So you'd have a 3-hour time slot that you have to fill.
Dude, who could talk for 3 hours straight to themselves?
They do it all the time.
Anyway.
And so part of that is, what's amazing about that is you would sprinkle that 3-hour time slot with news, and the rest of it would be commentary.
Yes,
here's what I think about this news nugget. Here's what my opinion is. And if you were entertaining enough or brash enough or you sold
provocative enough,
then you could keep people on there.
That's right.
So, we saw that.
The ratings were
saw that with all political people. You saw that with shock jock, DJs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It really became a whole thing.
Well, that's really true.
But the point was to keep people listening for lengths of time, and so you had to kind of create this brand, you had to kind of create this entertainment thing, and you had to keep people listening for long blocks of time so that they could also hear your ads and
the spectrum of it was really wide. You go from Rush Limbaugh on the far right to Howard Stern, on the far left, but it became this whole genre, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And money was definitely at the root of it. And find those personalities.
Well, and to keep people on, you had to create an us versus them.
Yeah.
You had to create a struggle. You had to create a brand, and a lot of that brand was a brand based on fear for a lot of those political DJs. And I think what got really twisted in there as part of this deal is that to make that thing sell and to keep people listening, it wasn't just enough to discuss the topics. Okay, here's what Democrats believe. Here's what that philosophy is. Here's what Republicans believe. Here's their philosophy. Here's how that clash is happening. To make it entertaining enough, to make it where you got repeat listeners, we began to ascribe to the other side, or to the other political party, motive. And we began to put on those people values and motives and malice, and then we began to refer to them with coarse and crass nicknames, and we began to belittle them, and then it was like a bunch of second graders on a playground calling out that other party. But the worst part of it was, now it wasn't just that your neighbor has a different political philosophy than you do.
Right, because we grew up knowing, that the neighbors might be Democrats.
I grew up early in my family, and it changed later, but I grew up in a family where my parents wouldn't even tell me who they voted for.
Yeah, my dad never did either.
They didn't want to contaminate that or change.
They wanted you to choose for yourself.
And that quickly changed, but but that was all part of it. And so when you do that and you began to demonize and vilify your neighbor, the people who don't vote like you do, the people who have a different letter of registration in front of yours, that has had such a terrible impact on us as a nation.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's made us suspicious of the people that are in the cubicle next to us or in our family.
The
amount of political unrest within our families at Thanksgiving and Christmas and the holidays. And so much of it goes back to this, not just that you voted different than I did, or not just that your political philosophy or theory is different than ours, but that you actually think I don't love my family as much as you love my family. That I am not as patriotic as you are. That somehow my paying my taxes doesn't count like you paying your taxes. I mean, the whole thing of vilifying this other people group has had such a dramatic and distinctive impact, to the point where, in a lot of ways, we really are at a critical state for us as a nation. And can we heal this? Can we get past this?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's. I remember even the Charlie Brown special. There are 3 things that you should never talk about: politics, religion, and the Great Pumpkin. Right. That's what Linus says. But there was a time I remember even having conversations with my dad as I started coming of age, and we were interested in journalism and on the high school newspaper staff. And so I would talk with Dad about that sometimes, and he would say, "I'd say, well, what about this difference between Republicans and Democrats, or this and that?" He'd say, "Well, at the root of it," he said, either group wants a good America. They love their family. They love God. And we're just all trying to get to that goal in a different way. But that's not how it is now. No. Like you said, I mean, it's if you're this way, then you hate America. You hate your family.
I mean, isn't that amazing? I mean, that we've been pushed to a place. We were fed this diet, 3 hours a time slot every day for 5 days.
Well, now it's on TV.
Over and over and over again. So once you eat that diet consistently enough, long enough, you begin to take that on, and now we are literally suspicious of these other people. Now we literally judge the intelligence or the morals of another person based on the fact that they might belong to another party than the one we belong to.
You know what I thought was so interesting? We were talking about Dreamers the other night, and we had a friend of ours. We did a short film that he did some acting in, and he came with his wife, and they're in their 20s. He's a really talented artist, musician, photographer, great guy. So we were really excited that he came, and he happens to be black. So we're in that.
I didn't notice that.
I think he knows that he's black, and we can see that.
Does he know he's black?
No. Okay. Anyway, what was interesting about it was we were having this conversation like you and I are with this group of people, and we had like a lot of age diversity. He was actually the only black person that was there. There was some other ethnic diversity, but it was real interesting because you were saying, what are some cases of growing up as us and them? And I'm thinking, okay, this will be really interesting to see what this guy says about this. And what's interesting was he raised his hand, and instead of talking about what it was like for him to grow up as a black person amidst, other white people, instead, he brought up a cousin of his that was gay and not accepted within his family unit, and how there was such an us and them over sexuality. I just thought it wasn't what I was expecting to talk about. It's the same thing.
What was especially interesting to me in that conversation was, he had said that, literally from day one, this kid who happened to be a boy was very effeminate. It was apparent from the beginning. So he grew up effeminate. He grew up with, in a way that would be very, quote, characteristic of a gay male. And, but he was accepted in the family until he said, I'm gay. And the moment he said, I'm gay, is the moment that he got ousted from the family. He got boycotted by his own family.
And it was a religious, spiritual.
So everyone knew, situation. And everyone, recognized, I think, in their own hearts and minds, who this individual was, and yet the fact that he had to declare it, suddenly that changed the rules for everybody else in terms of their engagement with him.
Exactly. And he said that it's still a situation within his family now. And so for him, the first us and them was the situation with his cousin. So it happens in all sorts of different, I think it can happen socioeconomically.
Absolutely.
You have people with money. I had a friend say the other day, this was weird to me. She said, I have a cousin that's like this, and I wish they could find some people more like us to hang out with. And it was really interesing because I was like, what does that mean? What is like us? What's the like us? What am I, what are we doing? Suburban white people? It was just interesting, and it was in passing. I didn't think, poorly of the person, but it just made me think, what does that look like?
Well, it's interesting, in this regard too, that you and I have made a pretty conscientious decision to try and stay out of those groupings as much as possible.
Yeah, so not be identified.
We don't identify. We happen to be independents, in terms of registration for politics, and all that to say that when it comes time to vote, I vote for both Republicans and Democrats. I vote for the person I think will do the best job.
Yeah.
I'm not obligated to support a party in that process. And but when it comes to conversations, about politics, we try to stay out of a declaration as much as possible because it keeps us in the conversation longer.
That's
the moment I say this issue or that issue, this party or that party, half the people I talk to are going to X me out. I'll be dead to half the crowd.
Yeah.
And that is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And
it is. What are some ways that you think, real quick, there's one other divisive line that I've thought about, and I sing at different events, and a lot of times it'll be weddings or country clubs. There are the people that are there, and then there's the help. Or the servers.
Gosh, yeah, right.
And that is a huge divide. And I always feel more comfortable with the servers,
right,
hanging out in the back, and just like regular people, but there's those people in the help. So anyway, I said all that to say it's not even necessarily only about politics or religion.
Right.
It's any time that we separate ourselves out. And I think in that particular case, the only way to combat this or overcome it is to be extra attentive and kind and loving to that other group, the help.
You're talking about humanizing people again.
Don't do that.
Which is kind of interesting because I think at some level that's where we got to in this conversation at Dreamers. This whole thing about this us versus them ends up in what we have done, especially in a political platform, but also in a race platform, but also in a socioeconomic platform, is in the us versus them portion of that, we begin to dehumanize the other side. So we have dehumanized Republicans or dehumanized Democrats based on what party we belong to.
Right.
So that we can discount them, so that we can no longer be responsible, well, from a religious standpoint, of loving them.
Wow.
So, we talk about how America, still a vast majority of people are, quote, Christians and belong to churches and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So the whole construct of that is loving other people.
Yeah.
And so you run into a snag when they disagree with your politics. How are you going to manage that? Well, part of it is to dehumanize them. Part of it is to say you no longer count. You're so despicable. You're so wrong in what you believe that I no longer really have to call you or count you as a full human. I can dehumanize you now.
I can disregard you.
And so now I'm not obligated to respect you. I'm not obligated to treat you with kindness. I'm not obligated to listen more than I speak. I'm not, any of those kinds of things. Yeah. We can do away with that by dehumanizing, which is crazy.
You don't have to look far back in history to see the dangers of dehumanizing.
Absolutely.
World War II, how we treated the Native Americans during colonialism, and also
what
slavery.
We did slavery.
I mean, my gosh. I mean,
the slaves, African Americans had to earn the right to be declared men. To be called full humans.
It's totally unbelievable to me. But the crazy thing about it is when you look at human history in general, not just America, although we're kind of special at it right now, these are things that humans have always struggled with.
Yes.
The us versus them,
right.
the dehumanizing. It's so dangerous. And one of the things we talk about, I mean, this stuff comes up a lot, but Jesus did have some really cool teachings. And one of the things that has helped me a lot is this scripture or saying that Jesus had where it says, I owe no man anything but the debt of love. And that is such a beautiful thing. If I owe someone the debt of love, that means because I am loved, I owe that to every person. But if you dehumanize someone, you disregard them.
You take yourself off that debt.
Then they don't matter anymore. Yeah. How do we not do that?
Well, and I think it's interesting, like you're saying about, being in a place where there are the guests and then there are the servants. There are the guests and then there are the workers. And part of that what we kind of run into on a daily basis is rehumanizing a relationship, or reanimating the humanity in somebody. So you show up to a coffee shop and there's the barista that's on their third hour of a long shift, and they're tired, and it's so easy to go in and just make all that thing utilitarian in the relationship and just give them the order and do that kind of stuff and all that stuff. But the moment you engage that person, you reanimate the humanity in that relationship.
Yeah, you rehumanize them. How's your family? What's your day been like today?
Yeah, you make them an equal with you again. So now, they are doing this role and you're doing this role and all that kind of stuff.
But I'm not better than you, and you're not less than me because you're making my coffee.
And it's the same thing. I think, maybe this... the answer to the question you're getting ready to ask.
Can you?
What do we do about all this?
Mind reading.
Thank you very much. Special gift I have.
Yes. What do we do? How do we get better at it?
I think that's part of it, is not allowing yourself to dehumanize the other side. Good. Not putting in some kind of check or balance in your own self to. In a conversation, to learn to listen. Yeah. There's a reason, as we say, they are just as scared of your America as you are of theirs.
So true.
And so there's a moment of trying to understand where that person's coming from. Why are you scared? What is this? Yeah. And what facts are there? And in our case, you and I have made the choice of making someone divorce us. So we choose.
We will be loving. You have to break up with us.
Yeah, you have to break up. You have to leave me.
We are not going to break up
so with you. Regardless of pretty much anyone in the room, we will do our best to try and connect, to try and treat that person with respect, try and listen and do all that stuff and make them love us.
Yes. And I think it's fun. I mean, for me, it's a game, but it's rooted in good in my heart. I feel like that when I am in a situation where I know someone has even probably judged me, and believes very differently than I do, and I see them in a party. So your first instinct as a human is like, "Oh God, there's Trevor," whatever, and then you just I'm going to stay over here by the pigs in a blanket and the wine, and just not interface.
Yes,
I do. That does sound good. I'm hungry, but anyway. So what I will do is, I will go to that person first in a way to get it over with, and I will just shower them with love. Yeah. Trevor, oh my gosh, how you doing?
You pretty much play by prison rules. So you go to the biggest threat in the room, and you just take them out right away.
Kill them with kindness immediately,
kill them softly
so that I can express some love and get back to the pigs in a blanket and the wine.
Yeah.
But no, it's
Stay
hard.
Here, Piglet. I'll be right back.
I love you. I love you with mustard, especially brown mustard. Yeah. I mean, that helps. But you're right. I like that. We almost need a T-shirt that says "Don't dehumanize, rehumanize."
Yeah.
But that's it. You're saying with that to that person, I acknowledge your value as a human, as a creature that God has made, and I owe you the debt of love. So I will not avoid you. I will give that to you.
Yeah.
And but dude, that's hard. You got to suit up every day.
You do. I think so much of this stuff is requires us to live in an intentional way, to be conscious, to be aware. So, like we talked in the last episode about seeing it and saying it, to try and get into the habit of seeing the good in other people and then telling them about it. In this case, it's about, it's on me to listen before I speak, and to try and listen to the person. And that's such an active thing, to listen to someone, not to be thinking about what I'm going to say next, not to be interpreting how I'm coming across, but to actually actively listen to what somebody is saying and give them that full attention. That's such a powerful thing. Yeah. To be connected with as many people as we can, so that we don't fall into this stereotype that people have for us. Yeah. That's really important to me. So, we constantly are trying to connect with people, especially with people who don't think like we do, or don't look like us, or, that kind of thing.
And is it okay sometimes, and I think this is a rhetorical question.
Sure. Retort away.
To just listen to someone without having to defend our own position, but just to let them say what they think. Yeah. I watch you do this sometimes. We'll be in a conversation sometimes with family members or whatever. They will say something politically that I know that is not a view that you would hold.
Because they crazy.
That's what they're saying about us right now. We're the us and they're the them. But I will watch you. I know that you have a different position on that particular issue that's come up, but I will watch you wait and listen. And I've watched you, sometimes it will get to a point where you feel like, to be true to yourself, you need to lovingly say something back. But other times you'll just let it be. Right. Just listening doesn't mean you agree.
Well, there are other ways to impact people than just our words. Yeah. And I think what they feel when they're with us, that they feel like they're in a safe place, that they can have this conversation, or somehow that when we are not, quote, going with them, we're not getting animated and jumping into the shouting and all that kind of stuff. It kind of extinguishes whatever rampage they're on. Yeah. And but then I also think there's almost always some place in there that we can connect on, something that we can agree on. And then when there's not, there's just a subject change.
That's right. You know, the old subject change.
What are you guys doing this summer?
No, I did one the other day. No, it's so true. You can look for some commonality. You can even say something like, if someone's talking about politics, oh, yeah, I can see how you'd feel like that. I know you're just worried about your daughter's future. Yeah. And I am too. Yeah. You know, so those human places of commonality will often shut down when the temperature starts rising, you know. And then if not, there's the old subject change. Hey, listen, I'm on the 5th book of Harry Potter. Right. Yeah, I'll tell you what, you read any Harry Potter?
Yeah. And I think, I think part of it also is, knowing that the responsibility for this change is on us. I cannot. There's no national leader that's going to come out and say,
There's not.
There's no candidate that's going to run on a platform that says, we ought to be treating each other with more respect. No, because they're not allowed really to do that in our current culture.
So sad, because that's exactly what they should be saying.
So it's on us to change that direction. It's on us to change this thing if it can be changed
and model it for our kids and.
So for me, that means being honest with myself. So there's a lot of radio and there's a lot of television that I can watch that reinforces what I already believe. And those talking heads and those media heads and all that are using terms that are shaping how I see the other side. And so it's like we talked about, they use these catty names and they use these disrespectful innuendos and all these kinds of things and
to vilify.
And so I'm having to make a decision now. As much as I find parts of that entertaining, I do know that that's registering inside of me.
Sure.
And I'm having to make a decision to do less of that, watch less of that, listen to less of that, because it is far too often impacting the way I see my neighbor. It's far too often impacting the way I see people in the coffee shop, and that's not healthy for me. And I would rather know less and be connected more than to have all the knowledge and hate most people.
It's so true. Yeah. There's a lot of good in social media, but one downside, especially in a political, election year, is difficult. You may have somebody that you really like. You guys serve on a board together, and you're helping in a community, and there's a genuine friendship and a connection we get together, and then they start posting stuff on their politics. And you're like, oh my Lord, Trevor, be crazy. We're gonna have to. So sometimes it's so better
difficult when you have someone and you've been you've known them for a couple of weeks, and then somehow they let slip some political thing. You're like, oh no, we can't be friends now.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. We were having such a good time.
It's like finding out they're already married. You're like, this relationship has no future now.
Oh, stop! You're terrible. Is that a wedding ring?
Oh my gosh.
But sometimes you're right. Sometimes it's better to overlook or to know less so that we can find more commonality. It makes loving somebody and treating them as a human easier.
Absolutely. So, speaking of commonality.
Oh, are we?
This has been Dreamers Live Podcast 006, Us versus Them. We would love to hear from you. You can message us. You can email us. You can find Anjanette's music, which is the music that opens and closes the show each time we do one.
Yes.
It's all on the iTunes or wherever you find surfing music, streaming music, all those music.
Stream surfing?
Yeah.
I like it.
But we would love to hear from you. Maybe there's something you want to talk about. Maybe you have a question. Maybe you have a complaint. And
okay.
So you can do all that stuff. But in the meanwhile, if you would do all the things the socials do, subscribe and like and share and forward and all those kind of things, we would so greatly appreciate it.
We would.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Hope you guys have a super swell day.
Yeah. We'll be back next time. Peace out.